All right, many of you out in the audience here, virtually and live, are dealing with Parkinson's, and maybe even a greater number of you in this room today are actually the caregivers of those dealing with Parkinson's disease. It's a big job, and our next speaker is going to focus on you, the caregiver. Taking care of yourself, so important, while taking care of others. With over 40 years of home care and geriatric specialization, Becky Auyer is knowledgeable about the challenges facing the aging population, passionate about assisting them and all of us to age well. She received her Bachelor of Science degree from Ithaca College, is a licensed physical therapist and advanced professional with the Aging Life Care Association. In addition to holding a care manager certification through the Academy of Certified Care Managers, she's a certified dementia practitioner. Becky created her own practice called Inspire Care in 2011, inspired by the care and advocacy she provided her mother for 25 years as she was dealing with Parkinson's disease. You may have met Becky at one of our previous conferences, and we're thrilled to have you back again. Becky's a recipient of several awards. Most recently, she was recognized as a COVID-19 Resilient Response honoree by Center State CEO, as a company that continued to provide client services during the worldwide pandemic. Currently, she serves on the Professional Advisory Committee for Hospice of Central New York and the Finger Lakes. Becky, welcome back to living an active life with easy for me to say, with Parkinson's disease. We're so excited to have you here to learn more about how to take care of the caregiver. Please help me welcome Becky, won't you?
Well, I do have the job of making sure that you're waking up. Dr. Sada said he was glad he didn't have this position, and I wanted to say, I've got it. I am the one that's supposed to make you awake and keep you going. So I hope that you're going to stay with me today. Thank you for the introduction. I have been proud to be a sponsor of this Parkinson's conference since day one. 9 years ago, Inspire Care was just starting, and we were able to sponsor the conference. And since then, it's been just a joy and privilege to be part of that organization. I would like to say that the reality of caregiving is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I am a professional physical therapist, as was told, but also I would say primarily I'm a caregiver, and I have been for many, many years. It's estimated right now that there are 41.8 million caregivers. Now that's a lot of people in the United States providing care. And it has escalated by 5 million over just 5 years. I think we can see the trajectory of caregivers, and I know we have a lot of them here. I'm going to use this to change our slides here. Our discussion points today will be personal caregiver stories. I've got some personally that I'd like you to hear, because I think personalizing the caregiving role is very important. You all could come up to this mic and have a lot to say, I'm sure, and hopefully I'll connect with you through my personal stories. There are 7 positive caregiver habits, and people say, oh, Becky, I don't want to start a new habit at my age and my stage in life, but you know what? Starting one new habit and learning about a new habit today will be so helpful going forward as a caregiver. Professional caregiver stories, I've got lots of those after 40 years of providing care to Parkinson's patients and their loved ones. So I want to provide you with some of my professional caregiver stories, always end with final thoughts and some questions as well. So let's move on to those personal caregiver stories. The first story, and if any of you were here 4 years ago, I was able to talk more about my own mother. I am a physical therapist, and thanks to Mom, I say Inspire Care was born. She had 25 years of gracefully aging with Parkinson's disease. And in the realm of things, that's quite a while. And I would say my primary caregiving role started from the first appointment I took her to the first neurologist appointment. And you know, when I see the symptoms, but she doesn't, it was like pulling teeth to get her to go to that appointment. But I knew we needed to start the professional oversight of her care. We walked away without medication. They just said monitor it. But from that day on, I was the primary caregiver. Even though she didn't live with me, I was raising a family. My dad was the primary caregiver in the home. But you know, when you're a professional, you're always going to be caregiving and watching. And so I did that with my mom. But you know, I learned from that experience that it was often the best thing I needed to do was to give over the caregiving role. I don't know about any of you. I went to every single appointment because I wanted to write down and be the scribe for all that was said. But you know, the first time I gave over that role to another individual, I let a friend of mine take Mom to a doctor's appointment. Well, she came away. Not only was my mom bright, smiley face, she'd made a new friend. She contacted this woman thereafter. She trusted her explicitly. And you know what? I learned I needed to step back and not do it all. We can do it better when we have help. I'm so sorry that this little cartoon doesn't have the saying and what the caption should read. And do you take Goldie to be your lawfully wedded primary caregiver? Don't you sometimes feel that way, caregivers, that you were wedded into this? It may be that you're actually married to the person, but maybe a fact is that you're caregiving for somebody that's not in the area with you, but you're still wedded to them. I think it's very, very interesting how we start our caregiving roles. And my mother-in-law, I would say this caregiving personal story is actually about her. Let me just see where we are. I'm going to stop right there. I went one back. Let me see if my back button works. There we go. I'll stay right there. The thing about my mother-in-law, who I love, was that she made a promise to my father-in-law that he would never go into a nursing home. Now, I don't know about you, but those are promises that sometimes are very hard to keep. But my father-in-law had a progressive condition that warranted lots of care in the home. She didn't have anyone living with her. They'd moved to North Carolina. She didn't have any of her 5 children near her. But the situation that my mother-in-law found herself in was increased care needed and no one around to help. And I found that the promise that she made layered a lot of guilt on her, that she had made this promise and she wasn't sure she could keep it. But I think what we all found out in the family is that we were challenged together to come and be those caregivers for my mother-in-law so she could take a break. So even though Nani made that promise, she did keep him at home, and that's what we wanted all for her. My third story, personally, is about a great friend of mine whose mother lives here in Central New York, and this friend actually lives in Eugene, Oregon. 13 years ago, her mom was diagnosed with a progressive condition that warranted a caregiver. Now, I don't know about you, if you're here caring for someone or if you're here as a caregiver looking for information for a distant person that you're caring for, but she sacrificed her own marriage, her own family. She moved to New York, was here many months out of the year, and went back and forth to Eugene, Oregon, taking care of her mother. I am so proud to say that right at the end, she was with her mom on the last breath that she took. But you know what? The dynamics of families, and you all may attest to this, are very challenging. We all would like to say that everybody is looking at the situation the same way, everybody's jumping to and helping. That doesn't always happen. In this situation, though, I found that her abilities to draw in from the resources in the community really helped make it a better situation. But you know what? If she had learned that there were 7 positive caregiving habits and learned them early on, I think she would have done so much better and felt more supported. So now let's look at some of these positive caregiving habits. You know, we are all told when we get on an airplane, and if it's like me, I haven't been on one in a long time, but don't we have to put the oxygen mask on first before we help the person that's with us, whether it's a child or someone else, the seat beside us? I think the same thing with you caregivers who are here. You need to take care of yourself first so that you can do the job well of taking care of your loved one. The other thing is I see those cross signs of support and direction, and so often I'm finding well-meaning individuals fed to me what they thought I should be doing. Any of you hearing some well-meaning advice? And so much coming from all different sources. It could be our families, it could be people in the community, it could even be coming from church where you want to get uplifted. But I think what we have to realize, everyone has an opinion, but in taking care of yourself, you're going to land on those aspects of these caregiving habits that really work for you. Positive caregiver habit number 1. And the exercise you're going to do is take out a pen, please, for me. If you don't have one, I want you to get one in your hand, especially if you're the caregiver. And what I would like you to write down, here's your homework, is I'd like you to write down just 2 things that would make the experience of caregiving easier for you. 2 items, 2 things, 2 activities, whatever it is, that right now pop right into your head that would make caregiving easier. If I was Jeopardy, I'd have that sound going back and forth, but just write down 2 of them, please. So often, I think one of the barriers to having asked for help is that we're caregivers. We give, we don't take. And so I think as a caregiver, predominantly, it's a very challenging role to have. Making a list of your needs, just like what I asked you to do, is very, very important. And maybe you've done it before and you say nobody even is there to help. But you know what? The more specific you are in your needs, the more help you will get. What about taking the garbage out on Monday nights? Maybe it's picking up medications twice a week. There are so many very specific roles during your day, and I think that if you are able to ask for those very specific needs to be met, there are those in the community and in your family that will rise to the occasion. And I think sometimes, often, we feel very sorry for ourselves. You know, as a caregiver, I don't know how many times I laid my head on the pillow and thought, I don't think I can do this one more time. It's very challenging. And I think those that we're caring for may not always appreciate all that you're going through as you're providing that care. But being grateful for the small things that happen during the day, I started a gratitude journal. It made a huge difference beside my bed that I could write down one thing even that I noticed was a positive in my caregiving experience. Right now I'm blessed to have 8 grandchildren, 1 on the way, 9, and one of our families has a routine of saying, what are your roses and what are your thorns at the end of the day? And I think caregivers, if you can write down what are those roses, those very positive things that happened, and maybe there's a thorn, write it down, and then set the paper aside. I think it's so helpful for us to reflect on gratitude. Identifying a circle of support, oh my goodness. You may feel like it's very small, but having a trusted group of friends, it might be a Parkinson's support group, it might be some other organization that you belong to. Having that circle of support will help you to ask for help. All right, let's move on to our habit number 2, get organized. Oh, people say, Becky, how can my life possibly be organized with all the time I have to spend in caregiving? I think, again, making a very small inroad into the task of organizing and prioritizing. Are your advanced directives in order? Do you have your will updated? Some of the small things, and just one, may be something that you need to add to your list to be well organized in this caregiving role. And I think the other thing I've written down here is to just realize it's an imperfect road. Maybe the organizational skills are not yours. Maybe keeping the calendar is not something that you do comfortably. But you know, I do believe that though someone else's road of this caregiving might not look the same, you have to realize if you were to have waffles tonight for dinner, really, who cares? Who's watching you, right? Give yourself the credit that there was dinner on the table, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, correct? My habit number 3 is let's take some daily breaks. I don't know how about you, but it's hard to find even a small bit of time in your schedule to have a break. And I think if we're able to look at the scheduling of what I call respite care. Now, to some people, respite care is a full week. Maybe you're going on vacation. Sometimes it's actually 30 minutes. That's respite. That's giving you a break. So I think it's really important. Those small windows, dedicated small windows of personal time. And I've had others tell me that connecting with nature is something that changes their whole perspective. They have a different view on life if they look out the window. You know, Central New York, I don't even want to say the S word, but we're headed that way. There's great beauty in snow on the horizon. There's great beauty in leaves outside of our window. And I think for the caregiver as well as for the one you're caring for, get over by the window, go out on the deck, spend a little bit of time outside, and you'll be blessed by it. This saying on here that wrinkles will only go where smiles have been. I don't know about you, but I'm getting more and more wrinkles with the years that go by. And if I can tell people that's where my smiles have been, I think it labels those wrinkles well for what we've done. How about caregiver habit number 4? Maintain and start hobbies. You know, this is one of those areas where I think a caregiver ultimately says, I'm in it for my loved one. I don't have time to start anything new for myself. Well, I've had so many of my wonderful, not only personal, but also my professional caregivers that have been able to add something to their day. One woman in particular decided her mother, who was in her 90s, who played the piano, would not play without somebody there. So this woman took up the ukulele. The ukulele is small, it's compact, it doesn't take long to learn, and she found that if she got her ukulele out, her mom would walk with her walker over to the piano, and lo and behold, they have a duet going on. It doesn't take much, and I think you might realize that you've learned to do something new in the process, and it's brought you joy as well. So think about a habit that was an old one. Maybe it's crocheting or knitting. Think about something that you might try that's new. Number 5, join a support group. You couldn't be in a better place to find a support group than where you are right now. And I'm going to encourage you that you not leave here without identifying a support group that you as the primary caregiver could be aligned with. You know, COVID had its good and bad points. I think one of them was Zoom connection. Those individuals who found it hard, no matter what time the support group was being held, to get out to the support group. It never was the right time, but I have found that people are able to turn on their computer, catch a little bit of it, be part of it, and so I think that is one of the positive things of COVID that I have found. But just what's happening today, this to me is a support group. I find that the connection of all of us being together and learning about the path that we're taking can only uphold what the caregiver is trying to do. So join that support group. Utilize community resources. How about considering separate support groups for the caregiver as well as for the Parkinson patient? I think that we have a need to have both. And if you can prioritize your time, you might find that there's an old organization, maybe it's a singing group, maybe it's an instrumental group that you've been part of in the past, would be very helpful to you. And I think an accountability partner, I don't know about you, but if my feet are held to the ground that a decision I've made is going to actually happen, then I'm sure to get it done. Having one person that is a trusted friend, a trusted accountability partner, and it may not be your loved one that you're caring for, but somebody that has a little bit of understanding of what you're going through, bring them into the fold, tell them, I need you to call me and tell me to do X, Y, and Z. It's amazing when you have somebody walking beside you during this caregiving role that is so important. So accountability partners. We've heard a lot today from our exercise gurus, and as a physical therapist, I couldn't agree more that movement and exercise is often better than medicine. It's something I've said for 40 years plus as a physical therapist, and I do believe that the caregivers need to incorporate that for themselves. Let's look at some of these. I'm talking about eating healthy, exercising, cooking. Something new in the kitchen would be a great thing for you as a caregiver for your own health and well-being. Meditation, prayer, something that would focus you on the task ahead. It can happen in the morning, at night before you go to bed. How about music? Oh my goodness, music is not only great for the Parkinson's patient, but for the caregiver as well. I see earbuds and headsets on people all the time. I think floating music in your home can be a wonderful uplift. So if there is a playlist that just brings a smile and therefore more wrinkles to your face, put on that music for you as well as for your loved one. And finding a quiet place. I think it's so necessary. I have a chair, and I don't know what's going to happen when the upholstery gives out. I'm going to have to recover it, but that's my quiet place. It always was when I was caring for my mom. It's a place where I can not only come and center on the needs that I have for the day, but it gives me my own spot. Find one in your home. I think it's really, really helpful. Let's go on to our last one, because I said there's 7. Positive caregiver number 7 is building caregiving skills. You know, it's so easy to just go day to day and not realize that the more you know about the condition of the person you're caring for, the more armed and prepared you are. And so I think coming here, my goodness, those of you that have been coming year after year, or even if you're new to this and you're going to come back next year, it's a great place to learn more information. Dr. Sada presented years ago about delusions and hallucinations. He presented today about sleep patterns. I think gathering all that information is really helpful. What are some other ways? There's hospital classes. There are other ways that you can learn about Parkinson's online. There are mentoring supports. Have you connected with one person who's also walking through the Parkinson's world that you can connect with? I think that would be very, very helpful. My number, if you want it, I'll be glad to be a mentor and a help. So feel free to connect with someone there. So we've got 7 habits, and I think it gives you confidence. It gives you a better scope and feel for life and what you need to do for yourself. But I do believe that all of these caregiving positive habits, let's bring them up again so that you know. I'm reminding you of all the ones that are on your handout to take home. You know, I don't want this talk to be just one more that's overwhelming in your task of to-dos. I really had hoped it might be something that was informative but different, that might give you the encouragement to step out as the caregiver and really prepare yourself for tomorrow, because it really is one day at a time. Because I'm a physical therapist, I find that goal setting is really what helps me to stay focused. What if you, as the caregiver, had one goal that you would establish for maybe the next 2 weeks? What would that goal be? Can you think of one that would be helpful? Maybe it's something that we've talked about today. Maybe it's an accountability partner. Maybe it's taking a break to walk around the block. I'm going to have you take that pen out. You wrote your 2 areas that would make caregiving easier. Now I want you to write one goal down, just one, that you could focus on for the coming weeks. One goal. And I found that goals can only be attained if there are manageable interventions or steps to take. If it's too overwhelming, lose 10 pounds, oh my goodness, where are we with that? We'll never get it done, right? But if you have manageable small steps toward each goal, so let's say this one, trying to feel healthier. What are some of the goals? Maybe you haven't gotten to the doctor's appointment that you needed to get yourself to. Taking that 30 minutes of quiet time to yourself. Or even the walk that you need to have to maintain your own health. I think if we break it up into smaller components of the goal, it's something that's manageable. I put a lot of pictures up here because I wanted to stimulate my thought and maybe your thought as to some caregiving stories that you have lived with. You know, I have one client who has 7 children. The caregiving role falls predominantly to that person who's here in the community, but there are 6 other children who want to be part of their parents' lives, want to be part of that loved one's care, if you will. Now, do they all get along with the same idea about how that should look? Absolutely not. Is there a lot of conversation about what we should do? Absolutely. And you know, as my role as a care manager, I found that I'm able to sometimes bring in a perspective and a mediation, if you will, between families. We've had Zoom calls with 7 children, all different parts of the world actually, and they all have a chance to weigh in on what they think. And often it's also a chance for the primary caregiver to say exactly what she needs. What would be the most help to me? I find that if we as family caregivers can give off portions of the care to those who really not only are skilled in that area, so I've got one of the sons, one of the brothers is doing all the financials. He's a CPA in Seattle. It's a great role for him to do. Sometimes it's because that caregiver writes notes. I don't know about you. How many love to get mail? I love to get mail, and I know my mom did. So I have one of those daughters writing the notes during the week. I think that it's very, very important to make it doable. And so I think if we are able to break it up, and also, as I found with this family, to have everyone have a role, they felt invested in the caregiving. Another family that's represented up on this slide, the daughter lived in Dallas and her parents lived here. She, I don't know, it was before COVID, probably made at least 10 to 12 trips, airplane trips back and forth to see her parents. It's a very challenging role. Some of you caregivers here, I know, who've stopped by our table are actually doing a wonderful job, but you want to do more. And you may not even have your loved one here that you're caring for. What I was able to do with her is constant communication. I was able to assist by visiting her parents regularly, giving them feedback on what they were doing. And I think if you can connect with individuals that are able to help you and give good feedback on caregiving, it's very, very helpful. Finally, on this one, I have learned that through care management, when we do what I call a home assessment, we come in and we ask the caregiver, and I turn right to them, how are you doing? Because, you know, I often am entering in the home to find out from the loved one what their needs are as a Parkinson patient. But I think what I need to do, and I often do, is ask the caregiver, how are you doing? So when my blood pressure cuff comes out and I check everybody's blood pressure and I see the caregiver's blood pressure is rising, I'm going to ask them how are they doing with their health management, and I'm going to make suggestions. So I really do believe that my professional caregiving stories have helped me to realize the exorbitant role that you all have. And I think right now what I would like to do is have every caregiver in the audience who's able to just stand up. Would you just stand for a moment? Can you stand? And I think a round of applause. Definitely an undervalued role, but one that is just enormous for all of us to be here. And those of us that came with Parkinson's, I know you're so grateful. I like to have small nuggets, and I don't know about you, but if I read something on my dashboard or on my mirror every day, it sticks with me. One of those nuggets that's up on the slide is that you're a caregiver and not a cure giver. Wouldn't we all like to just wave a wand and cure the world of Parkinson's? But I think what we need to realize, the caregiving role is not there to cure them, but to support them through it. And Nancy Reagan, if you'll see there on the slide, one thing that she did say, and of course it wasn't Parkinson's that she was dealing with President Reagan, but Alzheimer's, but I think it fits, that her recommendation was one day at a time, one step at a time, but love, more love. And I think the more you can have it in your bucket to give that love, the more your loved one's going to feel it. And lastly, I want you to go away realizing that even Beethoven, if you read his story, he was losing his hearing when the Third Symphony was written. Now, if an amazing conductor and person can write a symphony when he's not hearing, it gives me great encouragement that I can do the job that I need to do every day. And I'm here actually to try to encourage you as caregivers and to thank you so much for your support of your loved one. Thank you so much.